Today's episode of the Quinn Spinn is brought to you from The Russell, a historic East Nashville church transformed into a one-of-a-kind boutique hotel. The Russell's mission is to give back to the Nashville community through their Rooms for Rooms program by donating a portion of each stay to local nonprofits who are helping those experiencing homelessness. And of course, we're coming out of winter, but it was a cold one out there, and it's important this time of year, any time of year, to help those in need. So good on the Russell for stepping up for the community. Visit russellnashville.com to book your experience today. And by the way, this place is gorgeous. It's got this cool retro feel, and it's got this amazing podcast studio. So you can come in whenever you're in town, record a couple episodes, and go on your merry way and explore the city. russellnashville.com to learn more. Hey now, and welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, The Quinn. At least that's how I'm known here on the program, and at this point, really nowhere else. And I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. Of course, you heard Revel 9's All I've Become at the top of the show. That's been our opening theme song here at The Quinn Spinn since the great year of 2014, and it will be until the very end of days. And the premier guests keep rolling in. We have Rick Thurmond, who, of course, is the director of Confluence Carolinas, back again for another year. 3-day music conference and festival taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Queen City itself. I had a chance to attend last year. This event is awesome. It's such a great encapsulation of everything that makes the Carolinas music community great. And there's a civic mindedness to it, too. Of course, there's heavy civic involvement, heavy investor involvement as far as investor education. How can you fund your music career? This is the conference to go to. And I found it so useful, not only as an industry person, but just as somebody who works with independent artists, to learn and to connect with people and to be able to take that knowledge back to Nashville and everywhere else we go, right? So very fortunate to have Rick on the show. We're going to talk about this year's Confluence. We're going to talk about where it all came from, how it all started, and what you can expect from this experience taking place in Charlotte this October. Here it comes right now. All right, we are back here on the Quinn Spinn, and I have the honor and privilege of being joined by the man with the plan behind Confluence Carolinas, the amazing music conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, taking place this October 7th to the 10th. That is Rick Thurmond joining us here on the show today. And Rick, I had a chance to attend last year. I'm sure we're going to talk all about it and, of course, preview what's coming up this year. But first, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself here on the show, and thank you for coming on. And so how we do that here at the Quinn Spinn is I ask 3 standard questions to start. Those 3 questions are, who are you? What are your passions, and why on earth would you want to come on this show of all the shows?
Of all the shows, well, seriously, the honor and privilege is mine. Thank you for saying that earlier. So, well, I'm Rick Thurmond. You said it. You said it yourself. And I'm just a guy here in Charlotte, North Carolina, trying to help this city be the best version of itself. And I think that includes a city where music is at the forefront of the many things we put forward. So my passions are, I do love music. I'm not a performer. I don't sing. I can't play a note. I'm a consumer, but I also really believe in what music can do for a place and a city and a community. So I love music. I love live music. I also love storytelling. My first career was as a journalist and just have still a deep passion and connection to storytelling. And I love making things, launching things, building things, putting things out into the world that ideally bring people together, that, convene people. I think at parties, I'm often the guy that's kind of in the corner watching how everybody else is talking to each other and getting more satisfaction out of that. So I like putting the thing together that brings people together, that I don't necessarily need to be on the stage for that to happen. So I guess that kind of sums up my passions. It's sort of people, place, music, stories. And why on earth, why wouldn't I want to be on this show? This national podcast. You're a great guest at Confluence last year. And so I was actually really excited when you reached out to be on this. And I believe, is it the podcast like the beginning of it all? Isn't this where your whole journey began? So I'm
Yeah.
honored to be a part of it now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Almost 13 years strong. It'll be 13 in August. So we're almost raising a teenager here.
That's awesome,
So
man. There can't be very many podcasts that can claim a 13-year history.
yeah, yeah. No, people tell me all the time, oh, so you were an early adopter. I'm like, yeah, I wish I knew what that meant in 2013. I was just a guy who needed an outlet. And here we are 13 years later, it's been a very blessed journey so far. And of course, part of that blessing was getting to attend and speak at and mentor at Confluence last year and really get to know the city of Charlotte. And I think, Charlotte, is such a city on the rise in terms of arts and culture and of course music. There's so much going on there and the city has so much to offer. And what I really appreciate, one of the many things I appreciated about Confluence is y'all curated such an amazing experience. Just in not only in terms of the conference programming and the music programming, but also showcasing different neighborhoods. And one thing that I thought was a really great touch was each night the showcases were in a different neighborhood and the happy hour would lead you there. And then all the venues were pretty much in walking distance, right? And you can go from venue to venue with your conference badge and go check out what was going on. And of course, you have Casey Wilson with Carbon Events, who helps curate that experience as well, who is just absolutely brilliant. Like she did a fantastic job, her and her team last year. And it's really an amazing thing that you're building there in Charlotte. And adding, another stamp on, what Charlotte provides to the world. Of course, long known as a finance and a baking city, like there's also tons of culture there. And so how did you start to formulate this idea for Confluence? Where did it come from and how did it come to life?
Well, it really started out of our music ecosystem initiative, which when we started that, we weren't even sure what to call it. This idea of music ecosystems wasn't even a term that was being used that much, say pre-pandemic. But pre-pandemic, we with the nonprofit that I work for, which is focused on the urban center of Charlotte, we decided let's get intentional about developing music as a strong trait of this city. Partially because of what you just mentioned earlier, we are well known as a finance center. We're known for, we have professional sports. It's sort of a big sports town. And we know there's great culture here and music, but it just had not been as elevated maybe as it could have been. So we wanted to push that forward for some selfish reasons because I love music and going out to see it, but also I think it's a really important way to bring people together, which in a fast growing city is super important. You have people moving here from all over the place, from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. Music is a way to help bring those people together quickly. It's a way also for a city to sort of find and express its identity, which is, again, a challenge in a fast growing city. So I think those were reasons why we wanted to really push music forward. And part of what we came up with was, well, to do that, we need to invite people in and give sort of reasons for the people working in music to come together. So we thought, why not just combine those two things? And we're the biggest city in the Carolinas, where Charlotte is roughly we're 30 minutes north of South Carolina, so we're kind of right in the middle of the two states. It's really easy to get here. We're an American Airlines hub, so it's a lot of direct flights. We have two interstates that converge in Charlotte. So we felt like we have a chance to become a regional hub for music, for playing music, for the music industry. So it was first, let's create this thing once a year where everybody working in music comes together in the Carolinas and sees each other, collaborates, begins to build those connections and pathways. And then let's invite in first just as speakers and then eventually as attendees music industry leaders like yourself from around the country to come in and hopefully have like hearing you talk to us now. I'm like, yes, that's what we were trying to do is like show them the most vibrant parts of our city, the really interesting parts, and hopefully leave with a really positive impression, but also leave with some connections to the music scene here, to allow the people in our music scene to now work with and know people around the country. So that's why we did it. there was a sort of a proof of concept pre-COVID, and then we took us 4 years to get back to it because of the pandemic, and we essentially reimagined it coming out of the gate in 2023.
Another thing I really appreciate about Confluence is the civic mindedness behind it. How the local infrastructure can support the music community and vice versa, how the music community can grow to support the local infrastructure, which I think is very important, because also it goes hand in hand with this artistpreneurship focus, right? Of helping these artists not only create and write great songs and perform them, right? But also understand the business behind that, understand things like getting funding for their music. There was a great investor pitch segment of the program last year where multiple startup founders got to go and pitch their startups and get real-time feedback from investors, which is, I think, not only important for those individuals, but also anybody, in the audience, artists or otherwise, watching, listening, to understand, like, okay, if I want to get my project funded, whatever my project is, like, these are the things that I need to think about. It goes so far beyond, like, just writing, releasing, recording, trying to get sync placements, and like, how do you build a sustainable business, right? And that is something that in this day and age we have more tools to do than ever, but sometimes the knowledge gaps are there. And so Confluence, I think, does a great job of helping artists and those who support artists fill those knowledge gaps. And so, of course, with Charlotte being known as a financial epicenter as well as a rising arts and culture destination, how have you seen that marriage come together of the two, and how do you see it continue to evolve here as we head toward Confluence 2026?
Yeah, you really nailed it. And one of our sort of guiding principles as we developed Confluence was we wanted to develop an experience for where the industry is going, not where it's been. So, we can certainly gather together and talk about the problems and lament the passing of the way it used to be. But we said instead, well, let's talk about the possible solutions, and let's bring in speakers who are trying to solve those things, and talk about what opportunities exist. But so you nailed it with, well, let's invite people who are trying to solve some of these challenges and have a startup to maybe address it and have them, pitch. Let's also invite and work with folks like yourself and others who are helping artists see the sort of the full 360 view of what it takes to be a successful artist in today's industry. And more and more too, it's not just music, right? We've had various speakers who they produce a video for every single song they make. Why? Because they like producing videos, and it helps get them different forms of income, and it helps get them gigs because they see the video. So there's so many pieces to it today. And so sometimes I've had someone say, well, can't they just find that on YouTube? Well, yes, along with millions of other videos. And how do you know what's real? How do you know where to start? It's absolutely overwhelming. But if you can sit down with one individual, even for 15 minutes or an hour workshop, or meet 3 different people on a panel, it starts to get a little more real, and you start to understand, okay, this is what I should do next. And so we thought about that a lot too, is thinking about whether you are an artist or a manager or in the industry, you're walking away with some practical tools and ideas on what to do next, and then maybe who you can talk to follow up with. And yes, Charlotte has a lot of capital here because of the banking center. I think also there's this opportunity for Charlotte. The music industry in general is fairly centralized, right? We know it's based in Nashville, LA, maybe a little bit Atlanta, a little bit New York, maybe a touch in Miami. But more and more, because of technology and costs in various cities, you see some of that spreading out into different types of places. And I really believe Charlotte has an opportunity to be one of those places where there's a really strong, vibrant, healthy, maybe independent music sector, independent music ecosystem that maybe over time that evolves, but also maybe over time that's not the way the industry goes, right? Who's to say? But I think there's a real opportunity to build things in Charlotte, whether it's on the industry side or the artist side, that speak to the the possibilities moving forward in the sector. And I think that's why we try to have those conversations here in Charlotte.
And I think one advantage that a city like Charlotte or a city like New Orleans, say, has that doesn't necessarily have like the traditional industry infrastructure is that you get to build your own, right? And you get to really lean on, all of the stakeholders, whether that's at the city level, of course, at the artist level, the venue owners, and create this beautiful tapestry that isn't necessarily influenced by the machine. Of course, you want to have some ways to connect to the greater music industry, right? Which
Yeah.
an opportunity like Confluence gives the artists of the Carolinas and people who come from elsewhere to connect to folks from all these different cities, including the industry hubs. But there's something so organic happening in cities like Charlotte, in cities like New Orleans. Of course, we go down there for NOLA Music Con. And these, I call them like the boutique music industry conferences where like you're getting real FaceTime with industry people, and not only industry people, but industry people who want to see the industry evolve and want to have a hand and a seat at that table.
Yeah.
And I think an opportunity like this for the artists is super important to take that seat at the table in an industry where, frankly, they really haven't had one throughout the course of history, right? It's an opportunity to go get that FaceTime where everyone's on a level playing field and you're coming up with the solutions together. You're giving feedback to the industry is giving feedback back to you, and you're able to continue those relationships after the fact. So, from what you've observed over the past few years, how have those relationships continued to blossom after the conference is over, after everybody goes home? What are some of the outcomes of that as far as how those relationships have continued to grow organically, not just there in the Carolinas, but everywhere that Confluence touches?
Yeah, no, we were really trying to make that possible with Confluence. So yeah, we use the word boutique, but I think one of the cool things about Confluence is, so let me put it this way, like I love some of the big major, music conferences. We know what we're talking about. But so many times you'll meet someone there one day for 5 minutes in line and you won't see them again the rest of the week, right? Because it's just so big and massive. And you always feel like there are these rooms somewhere that, like the cool people are in and you don't know how to get in those rooms. That's where the action is happening. It probably isn't the case, but it just feels that way, right? Because you're like, I know something's happening somewhere and I'm missing it. And so at Confluence, though, what I hear a lot is like, I met someone the first day and then I saw them two more times that day and then I saw them again at night. And so by the end of the 3 days, you feel like you know that person. And that makes it so much easier to follow up and have a conversation as opposed to getting home, having, 25 business cards or app connections, and you look at the name, you're like, I have no idea who that person is, because you just don't remember. And what the other thing I saw last year, especially being our third year post-COVID, was the number, I call it little mini family reunions, where I saw people hugging embracing that I know had met at the previous Confluence, but they had kept in touch over the year, maybe saw each other at another conference, or maybe, when that person was back in Charlotte, they got together for a drink. Clearly there had been multiple touch points over that year to where they felt like, oh my gosh, it's great to see you again. And I've not seen that at any other conference that I've experienced personally. Maybe Neva has some of that. So I hear about a lot of these conversations continuing to happen. We also take care to curate speakers who want to talk to people. We try really hard to not have speakers or panelists who kind of step out of a green room onto the stage, back in the green room, and then straight to the airport. Every single speaker, including the president of the Grammys and the co-founder of CAA Nashville, hung out right in front of the stage after the panel and talked to whoever came up and talked to them. And so that's really important for us too, that it's someone who is, yes, we would love to have you on a panel and speak about your area of expertise, but we would also love for you to just hang out and engage with the attendees. And we really ask for them to go to a showcase at night, go out and see some of the music, go to the networking party, like be a part of the whole conference experience. So we try to create space for that to happen. You can't legislate connections, right? but you can create as much space as possible, try to invite the right guests, and then watch that magic happen. Another artist I talked to, this was the prior year. I don't forget the exact numbers, but he had reached out and had conversations with 12 different panelists that he met at Confluence within like 3 months. Every single person got back to him, which I don't know about you, but I've gone to conferences and connected and reached out and never heard back. So, I get it, people get busy, but we're trying to help foster those connections for sure. And we see it happening time and again.
Yeah, and they do carry over time, because I can tell you just, the past couple of years of traveling, you do start to see some of the same people show up in these different cities. I think of somebody like Reed Wick, who I've seen, who I met at NOLA MusicCon a couple of years ago, and then saw him at Confluence. It's like, hey, wait a second, and like you start to have conversations, and I think you start to become really curious about like, I keep seeing this person. What do they do? Who are they? And like, how can we help each other, right? Because again, it's a chance to bring people into the room, whichever room it is, whichever city it is, who are working toward meaningful change and equity for artists in the industry. And it's inspiring to be a part of that, and to like see that, how something like Confluence does fit into the greater ecosystem and the greater landscape, because it does. And I think in this globalized world that we live in, it's important to build those pipelines to and from wherever you're based, so to and from Nashville to Charlotte, to and from Charlotte to everywhere else, that you can, that you can access, right? And that where people are coming from to visit the city. And then, maybe there's an opportunity to go visit them in their cities. And you start to see this, you start to see some of the same familiar faces, and you start to look forward to that too. You start to really build these relationships and, really understand what people do, why they do it, and, how you're perhaps able to work together going forward. And, whether you're artist, again, whether you're industry, whatever side of this you're on, like there's a place for you here. There is a seat at that table. And I think it is really inspiring. And you mentioned the showcases, and first of all, last year's showcases were just across the board amazing. A lot of just super talented artists from throughout the Carolinas. And so curious to know what the plan is this year as far as what we can expect on that end, on the showcase end, and what parts of town we might find ourselves in throughout the course of Confluence.
Yeah, we experiment with that every year, trying to find different models that work, and with just trying new experiences. And last year, like you mentioned, we had the logistics finally worked out. We were able to have it sort of neighborhood by neighborhood, and each neighborhood very, very walkable and centralized. So I was really excited to see that finally come together and to see people react to it. So, and as you mentioned, we have actually the last 3 years, we have only booked Carolina-based artists. Every single artist who's played has been based in North or South Carolina. We have an application process that we use to curate showcases, and then we curate artists as well into the festival piece. So this year, actually, we're going to double down on all of those things. We are really trying to expand the music side, make it really branded more as a festival. And one of the things we have seen, and we really want sort of the music public, if you will, to come to the shows at night. Well, the daytime is really pretty industry specific. Certainly, we actually have people come that are just curious about the music industry. They've always wanted to know how it works, and they see a couple companies or labels or a speaker they're familiar with, and so they come and buy a ticket, and we welcome that absolutely. But we really wanted to sort of put all this out for the open and use Confluence as a way to get people inside our independent venues. And the vast majority of the venues that we book are independent venues. And so we're going to take that branding to the next level this year, brand it as a music festival. We're actually going to add a Saturday outdoor stage. We've never done that. So we had a small outdoor stage 2 years ago as a private event, but this year we're going to go again, it's all boutique, 1,000 to 2,000 people probably, but day, night, sort of mini music festival on Saturday to really expose it more to the public, as well as the nighttime piece. We may add more shows this year. So if we did, we had a different neighborhood each night. Maybe each night both neighborhoods are activated. So you kind of choose your neighborhood that night. And we will be booking some touring acts as well. So we were kind of trying to grow intentionally, but felt like this was the right year to start adding some touring acts as headliners or just different kinds of talent. Often they're going to still have some connection to Charlotte or the Carolinas. It's kind of interesting actually. Started looking at some touring acts who find out, oh, this guy actually grew up in Charlotte, or he's on a label founded by a guy from Charlotte, or oh yeah, this artist that I thought lived in Portland just moved back to Asheville. So it still ends up coming back to North Carolina one way or another, a lot of these artists, but that'll just give us more diversity. And we are multiple genres. So, I think we literally over the 3 years, I don't think we haven't done much in the EDM space, really anything, but every other genre we have touched so far. Not every genre every year, but we've covered them all. So we try to do that as well.
I'm really excited to hear that about the Saturday stage, and I'm really excited to know that I'll actually be able to stick around for Saturday this year. Last year, I had to drive to New Jersey straight from Charlotte for my niece's Sweet
Oh,
16.
man.
I woke up at 5. I stayed till like midnight at the showcase. I'm like, all right, I got to go back. I woke up at like 5 o'clock, and I got there just in time. So it was like, man, a minute longer, and might have not worked out, but. Yeah, I wasn't able to stick around for Saturday last year, and I was bummed, but that sounds amazing, and it sounds like a great year to stick around on Saturday. And yeah, I mean, it's just inspiring again to see how this grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and more of the Carolinas music community, as well as those from the outside, have a chance to enjoy this and start to treat Charlotte and the Carolinas as a music destination. Because in addition to Confluence, you have the NC Folk Festival a few weeks before that. I believe that's in Greensboro. Of course, you have Asheville not far away, which is a hub of its own, right? So you have talented folks coming from all over the place, putting the Carolinas music scene on the map more and more year over year. And so for those who want to get involved, whether they're from the Carolinas or not from the Carolinas, how can they do that? How can they reach out, whether they're an artist, whether they're a potential speaker, whether they're a sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really easy. It's confluencecarolinas.com. And then the Instagram handle is the exact same at Confluence Carolinas. That's probably the easiest way to reach us. Both of those have, there's an email sign up on the website, and we keep that reasonable. And then DM on the Instagram account as well. And then there's some other forms you can, customize to reach out about sponsorship. And certainly always looking for sponsors that sort of share our vision and want to help us build something here in Charlotte and reach this community. And I'm glad you mentioned the rest of the state, because we do feel it kind of evolved at this home for, this annual touch point for the state, as well as upstate South Carolina, where all these folks come together. And we have a lot of speakers come down from Raleigh or Chapel Hill or Durham or Asheville or Wilmington. And we try to really curate artists from around the state as well. The North Carolina Music Office is a big supporter of ours. So it's kind of a gateway into the music scene of North Carolina and the Carolinas. So it's a great way to kind of get a pulse check on that by showing up at Confluence this year.
And so some dates to keep in mind, because the first badges will be on sale soon, right? Let's talk about when people might be able to pick up their badge and decide to join the fun this year.
Yeah, so we'll be putting those first round of badges on sale probably. I think probably by the time this podcast comes out, we won't have any content announced yet. This is sort of the if you know audience that this is the lowest price we'll be able to get it. So folks that know what we're doing and definitely want to come back and make plans, that's the best way to do it. And then we'll be announcing some speakers, topics, artists, etc. within a few weeks, but then the price will go up a little bit. So we like to reward our current friends and fam to get in on the action early. But those first badges go on sale really soon. I think the hotel links are already up on the website for those interested in reserving a hotel room. Both blocks filled up last year. So yeah, now is the time to start making plans. And if we will start, the 7th is a Wednesday. So we'll start after lunch on the 7th. That gives people in the region, if they choose, time to travel in that morning and you maybe save the cost of a hotel room the night before. Certainly you can come in early if you want. Our CPB would love it if you did. But then we do full day conference programming on the 8th and the 9th. And then we'll have live music at night on the 8th and the 9th. And then the kickoff party is on the 7th. I know I'm not going chronologically. And then the Saturday stage is on Saturday. So the conference is really focused 7, 8, 9. And then we move to just full on good old fashioned fun on the 10th.
So Confluence Carolinas coming up. A couple more questions before I let you go, Rick. But first, I just want to say too, like last year was actually a pretty significant moment for me because I remember after the first night of the conference, going back to the hotel. And when I was getting ready to move to Nashville, I wanted two things for myself personally. I wanted to wake up with purpose and work on my thing every day. And I wanted to be able to show up to life however, whenever, wherever, right? And it was in the hotel after I got back from the first night of the conference that I realized I had those two things. Because here I was in a downtown hotel in Charlotte, about to speak at this conference, you know. And then immediately after that, as I mentioned, I was driving to New Jersey to show up for my niece, who, when she was 9 on her ninth birthday, told me I should move to Nashville. So, like, I just want to tell you that I had a moment, after that first night of the conference, had such a great time, and I was like, you know what, like, I have the life I want. So like it was a really significant thing for me too last year, just to like have that realization there. And thank you again for having me last year. And I look forward to more fun to come here in the years ahead. And one question I want to ask you before we depart is I call it the biggest lesson. If there's one lesson that you would go back and teach yourself starting out with this whole project, with launching Confluence, putting it together, that you feel would have been invaluable to know at the start, what would that one lesson be?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. That I really love hearing that, and it means a lot that you had that and that you shared it with me. And I also think we have a new marketing slogan, which is "Come to Confluence to get the life you want." Um, but so, God, lessons, man, you know how it is. There's like uncountable numbers of lessons, but I think a couple that stand out to me, and these may even sound trite, but one is I guess it does happen, but for the most part, like there's not really such thing as like the overnight success or the giant breakthrough. I find that it's almost always incremental. That like the goal is just to keep getting better, to keep learning, to keep building. And and there were years where I thought this is going to be the year where all the work comes into play and it gets this big. And it just rarely happens that way. But then if you keep at it, sometimes a few years in, you stop and you look back, you're like, holy shit, we've come a long way, you know? And if you're just fighting for that breakthrough or that big moment, you sometimes don't get to that point, right? So just keep building. Sometimes that breakthrough will happen. I will say from like year one to year two, we were like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like it felt like we made a huge, growth. And then like year 2 to 3, it was like, whoa, that was a leap. And I think it's because you just keep at it. And I think this plays into it is trust your instincts. You're the one that probably spends more time thinking about your thing than anybody else. You're the one that has probably read more things about it, talked to more people about it, thought more about it. And so at the end of the day, and it's going to have to be your thing, right? Now, there's a bunch of people around me with Confluence, 100%. I'm so glad you called out Casey, longtime co-conspirator. She is brilliant. But there have been plenty of times where somebody was like, oh, that's not going to work, or you shouldn't start until you have a 7-figure budget, or whatever the thing is. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know, it feels like it might work, And maybe I put it off for a year or two and finally try it. And the thing is, like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but either way, you tried it and you learned. And I think that learning is the third piece. Like, just go for growth, like, go for incremental growth, and then the breakthroughs will come. Two is like, really trust your instincts. And three is always be learning. Like, there's really not much such thing as a failure. Like, I just always ask, like, what did we learn? What did we learn? And I think as long as you keep those three things in mind, it may not be the thing that you thought it would be, but you're going to build something.
And build something you have and continue to do at Confluence. And I love all those points, especially that first one. Overnight success is a myth. It's iterating. You're getting better every time through that feedback, through those lessons, whether you deem it a success or a quote unquote failure. It's that saying, either win or you learn, right? Well, either way, you win because you've gotten something that you can take and point your compass toward a truer north if maybe you did veer off course. And if you're on course, then stay on course. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't. And over time, that's going to compound. And it's certainly compounding there in the Carolinas for you, Rick, and for the entire team there at Confluence. And I'm so excited for this year. It's going to be a great year. You can tell already, even though we're months away, the buzz is building and can't wait to be there. And I want to thank you again for joining us and looking forward to keeping tabs on updates in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. This has really been, it's really been a fun conversation. We can't wait to have you back in Charlotte this year.
Looking forward to it, Rick. Thanks so much. All right, y'all. I'll be back to wrap it up after the jump. All right, I want to thank Rick Thurmond from Confluence Carolinas for coming on the Quinn Spinn today to tell us all about Confluence 2026 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Of course, that will be taking place October 8th to 10th in the Queen City. And again, so much to look forward to, amazing live performances and incredible insights as to how to build a sustainable career as an artist, as a person in the music industry, which of course we're all about here at the Quinn Spinn and Underground Music Collective. This has been the Quinn Spinn, 2 N's in Quinn, 2 N's in Spin. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more, also on the socials. Quinn Spinn Official on Instagram, and the Quinn Spinn on Facebook is the oldest handle in the entire UMC universe. By the way, what's UMC? That stands for Underground Music Collective, our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more. UMCworldwide.com and UMC Worldwide on the socials. And make sure you check us out. We've got a big announcement coming this week, the perhaps biggest announcement we've ever had here at UMC. And that's saying something because we've been on a roll these past few years. But trust me, you're going to want to stay tuned for this one and become an underdog too, because then you get first access to all the news and all the opportunities within our UMC ecosystem. Revel 9's All Become going to take us out like it brought us in. Grab some muffins on the way out.